Buenos días a todos, soy Gerardo Mariña, soy el responsable del grupo Service Plan en España y quería daros a todos la bienvenida a esta sesión donde vamos a hablar del South by Southwest. South by Southwest es el principal evento que tiene lugar todos los años en Austin, en Texas, en Estados Unidos, donde se unen las tendencias, las últimas tendencias del mundo, tecnología, cultura y sociedad. Realmente es lo más avanzado del mundo y son los temas que preocupan a las sociedades, a los tecnólogos y lo que nos ocupa en gran parte a la industria de la comunicación. En primer lugar, dar las gracias al periódico de la publicidad y a Miguel Ángel Corrales por haber hecho posible esta transmisión y esta sesión. Y para compartir esta información y para compartir estas tendencias tenemos con nosotros a Alex Turtschan. Alex Turtschan es el director global de innovación de MediaPlus. MediaPlus es la agencia de medios del grupo Service Plan, que es el principal grupo de agencias de comunicación independientes del mundo. Alex ha estado allí, va todos los años y trabaja desde su puesto como director global de innovación, trabaja con anunciantes locales, internacionales, realmente ayudándoles en sus necesidades de comunicación, entendiendo el mercado. Y va a compartir con nosotros su experiencia y las cosas que ha visto allí. Con lo cual, Alex, thanks very much for joining us. Over to you. You're mute.
The classic. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the nice introduction, Gerardo. I understood most of the intro, but my Spanish isn't that great, so you'll have to deal with me in English. We're going to jump into today's topic, South by Southwest, and what we learned this year from the conference. And yeah, the big theme that we took away this year that we will see throughout the whole of the presentation today is connections and collisions. And in a couple of minutes, I'll go deeper into why we picked this theme and why it's a very good fit for this year's conference. For those of you who don't know, Gerardo just mentioned it very briefly. South by Southwest is one of the leading conferences in the world for marketers, in my opinion. We've been going there as Media Plus for almost 10 years. And it's really one of my highlights every year, traveling to Texas, to Austin, to learn the latest in technology and entertainment and culture. And what's really special about this event, if you're attending marketing conferences, tech conferences regularly, they usually are very focused on one subject, right? It's about the latest in marketing. You learn about cases and best practice, or they're about technology, like the Web Summit in Lissabon, for example. Or they're more get-togethers of industry people, networking, sharing thoughts, discussing new projects, talking about the future of creativity, for example, like we'll do in Cannes at the Cannes Lions Festival in a couple of weeks. But at South by, all these things come together. Because this event started out not as a marketing festival or a marketing conference, but as a music festival over 30 years ago. It was in 1987. Because Austin always has been a big city of live music and entertainment in the country music scene. And after a couple of years, they introduced a film festival. So film is also a big presence at the festival every year. And at the end of the 90s, during the first big internet boom, they added a multimedia festival. And multimedia is a word we don't use that much anymore today because everything we do is multimedia. But that turned into South by Interactive, which today is, as I mentioned, one of the leading conferences for technology, for business. And there's hardly any events in the world that bring together speakers of that caliber with these amazing insights that really are happy to share whatever they know. So I can just encourage everyone to travel there. Here's a couple of impressions from this year's conference. In the top middle picture, you see some of our group that was on location. We had colleagues from Germany, from Poland, from Austria, from France there this year. We also were very happy to take away one of the South by Innovation Awards this year for a case from our colleagues at Service Plan. And yeah, it's just a great event to be there. What you can see on the right side are some impressions of the South by Convention Center, which has been one of the stables in Austin for many years. And that's going to be a big change next year because that building got torn down and will be replaced by a much bigger conference center in the downtown of the city, which kind of shows what kind of impact this event has had on the city for the last, 20, 25 years. And today, a lot of big tech companies are moving their headquarters to Austin or have big offices there, and not only because Texas has very low taxes, as you might know, but also because the city really lives the spirit of technology, of thinking the future. So companies like Dell, like Tesla, Elon Musk's X, they all have offices there, including Meta, Google, I think Pinterest, are really present in the city, and you can feel this everywhere. That it is a city of technology, but also entertainment. So let's jump right into what was important this year. South by always has been the conference and the festival that was very forward-looking, looking into the future, and looking at things that we have to deal with today. And the big topic of last year's festival was the transformation era, that is mainly driven by artificial intelligence. But what we've seen over the last year is that this transformation area goes far beyond technology. It goes far beyond a new tool set that we all get to play around with and implement in our business processes, because we see that transformation is happening left and right in all areas of life and society in the world, in terms of economics, socially, politically. And today we wake up pretty much every morning and we're looking at our phones and we're thinking, okay, what has Donald Trump done last night that we will have to deal with this week? And this was the overarching feeling this year as well at South by. Everything that happened was under this kind of uncertainty of where is the world even going and how do we deal with that? Because we see that old rules and systems, they start to break down, they start to vanish, and new ones take their place. And it's up to us to, deal with these puzzle pieces and look at the results of collisions of different topics and areas, and but also seeing the opportunities, what kind of new connections arise from this theme. And a couple of those I brought to you today, and we're going to start with the inevitable topic of AI. I promise I won't talk too much about AI today because I think we all heard enough about it in the last two and a half years in pretty much every setting. But there were a couple of really interesting developments that were discussed this year, because I think the past 2.5 years, we were under the impression that AI was a really cool, almost magically new technology that was very exclusive, that could only be built and used by big American tech companies like OpenAI, like Microsoft, like Google, that had to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, that needed a lot of hardware, a lot of data to build these large language models and release them. And that's what they did. And now it kind of feels like, oh, is AI almost becoming a commodity? Is this something that everyone has access to and everyone can use? Because it's true. It doesn't matter if it's us in a professional setting in marketing, we all can use AI in our browsers, on our phones, but it's also like our families, our partners, our children use ChatGPT to do their homework at school. Students in university use OpenAI. My mom OpenAI to create recipes for cooking and lets AI create her weekly shopping list, and she's over 70. So AI really has become this commodity tool for many people in the last 2 years. But that also means that everyone has access to them. And as I mentioned, for the longest time, it kind of looked like, we really need these big companies to push this technology forward. And you could see it in the stock prices of companies like Microsoft and Nvidia. And then suddenly other players come along and release, for example, a large language model like DeepSeek out of China that was immediately made open source and delivered almost the same results as ChatGPT, but was much cheaper to train. It was much faster to train. It didn't need these insane invests. And there's a lot of research happening right now, and results are being shared on how to build your own large language models, build them much cheaper on cheaper hardware, on different data sets that are almost as powerful as the bleeding edge and top line AI tools out there. So we really see that this technology is becoming a commodity for everyone, not only on the user side, but also on the developer side that can be implemented in many different areas. And as Amy Webb, one of the top speakers every year at South by, she's the founder and CEO of the Future Today Strategy Group, working with a lot of big American companies on future consulting. She summed it up quite nicely when she said, what's bleeding edge in AI today might be old news later today, because someone else will find a way to do it much cheaper and better sometimes. So maybe investing in the big companies isn't necessary. Maybe we can all use this technology even in smaller organizations in the future. And this also has the interesting effect that if large language models are really commodifying the public knowledge on the internet because they were trained on pretty much everything that was ever written and published digitally, and 99% of our digital knowledge is already in these models and everyone can use them. How do we actually create value with that? Because if everyone is on the same playing field, it's very hard for an organization, for a brand, for an agency to create additional business value out of basically a public tool, right? So if you use the models as they are, you only ever hit the benchmark because everyone else can do it as well. And to really create additional value, and this was one of the big messages of this year's conference, you need proprietary training data, stuff that only you have, that is exclusive, to really create business value for yourself. And Ian Beecroft, who is one of the top transformation consultants, his company is called Signal and Cipher. He gave a really fantastic session outlining this for the communication space. And he said, if the value of common knowledge that we all have for insights, for strategy building, that's going to zero because everyone has access to that. But what's going to a premium price is the value of proprietary knowledge that only you have within your organization, but you have to find ways of getting it into a data set and training an AI model on it that then your organization, your brand, your agency can use. And the real value in the future in AI will come from codifying all this internal knowledge that we have within our organizations, within our own heads, like our personal knowledge, the knowledge of our teams, the knowledge of our whole enterprise. And there's this old saying, out of the United States, if IBM knew what IBM knew, right? If everyone within a giant organization had access to all the knowledge that is clustered around the many different departments and people with all the legacy and history, they would be much more efficient, much more powerful. And I think that's true for all of us. We at the House of Communication in our network, we always say it as well. Oh, if only we knew what cool new things Gerardo and his team are doing in Spain, we would obviously we talk about it, but if we had access to it with our fingertips and just could ask a large language model, we would be much better off in the business than, for example, our competition. And the good news is we now have tools to do that, because one of the top 10 breakthrough technologies, according to the MIT Technology Review that presented those on stage, was small language models, which are basically the same as a large language model, but they are trained on a much more defined data set, on a smaller data set, which is cheaper to train, which is faster to train. And the good news is you don't need a giant cloud infrastructure to actually run these models. So it's less hardware dependent. You can run them on premise on your own servers, on your own computer, sometimes even on a mobile phone. And the really good news is you don't have to give all your very valuable data to a third party, for example, OpenAI or Microsoft, and you don't have to trust them that they don't use this data to train their model that is available to everyone else. So you can really use your data for your own models and use them in your own organization with SLMs. And that's one of the very important learnings and also to-dos for us for this year. Scott Galloway, most of you probably know him, professor at NYU, the Stern School for Marketing. He's a speaker at many different events, very prolific podcaster. And he said the first victim of the AI revolution and transformation were the AI companies themselves. Because you're not going to get rich as a shareholder in OpenAI, in Microsoft, probably over the next 5 to 10 years. But you have to be invested in the topic of AI, right? But for your own organization, you have to find ways to utilize this technology to grow your own business, to become more efficient, and then you're going to be successful. And he compared it to the airline industry. He said, no airline ever made a lot of money just by flying planes from A to B, because everyone can buy a Boeing, can buy an Airbus, and get this business going. The real value is created elsewhere through the brand, through the extra services, through the network, through people, through the experience. And the same is going to be true for AI. It's not going to be the technology of some big companies, but how you implement it into your daily processes. With that comes another development that was very, very present this year, because if we think about the future where all the knowledge we have within organizations from our people, from our teams, is available in a model, how much value does a specialist with all the specialized knowledge actually have anymore at the workplace in the future? And in an age of instant availability of knowledge, the business value of this specialist knowledge, it diminishes very, very quickly, right? And the future, and this was something that I really found very thought-provoking, was various speakers said, hey, in the future, we're going to need within our organizations a lot more generalist roles, people that are really good at different things, that can use the specialist knowledge provided to them by AI support, combine them, do something new, create something bigger from the sum of their parts. And this is going to be one of the central skill sets of the future, being a generalist and knowing that how to implement specialist skills. And I attended a really fantastic session by Mike Bechtel from Deloitte. He's the chief futurist of Deloitte Chicago. I can only encourage you to look up some of his talks on YouTube. He had a session on how to build successful organizations in the future and how do you have to upskill your workforce. And his central theme was that, in the past, specialization has been a very reliable path to reaching best practice. If you only specialized and did something long enough and learned all the ins and outs of a certain topic, you really could do great business. But he said, if all that is now available pretty much to everyone within an organization through AI, you really need to work together, bring different skill sets together, and really create this cross-pollination of skills and knowledge for creating next practices for this transformation era in AI. And I think that's a big task ahead for a lot of us, because in the last 2.5 years, a lot of organizations were very active in terms of implementing AI, but we mostly focused on low complexity tasks, right? So administration, back office, tech infrastructure, automating things like reportings and the generation of copy and text and asset production. But nobody really has cracked the code yet for doing great things with AI that are better than the traditional way. And this will come if we really rethink how we can use AI to improve more complex tasks and roles, where we bring different skill sets together, where we bring different areas of working together, automated through AI, maybe through AI agents, to create truly new and better things and create more business value. But that also requires rethinking how we treat skills, because skills are the new data. AI doesn't mean that everyone suddenly is redundant and not necessary anymore. And people still need to learn new skills, but the shelf life of these skills won't last them for 10, 20, 30 years throughout their career. Today, the estimated half-life time of a new skill that you learn, be it in coding, be it in AI tool development, it's about 2.5 years. And until it's redundant and gets replaced by something better. So you have to constantly relearn, become a serial learner to adapt yourself and really map out your own career in the future. And this is also something that Mike Bechtel and Ian Beecroft pointed out. The next war for talent will center on people who are really good at rapid skill acquisition and skill transfer efficiency. So people that are really good at learning something new, supported by AI, transferring it to their area of expertise, bringing in their own knowledge, and transfer the things that they learn to many different things. And that requires us not to only invest in codifying our internal knowledge into AI models, but also really training our people, our workforce, our colleagues on how to become better at being generalists, working with all these new possibilities they have, because they can't rely on being the best strategist, the best media planner, the best brand copywriter anymore. They really need to bring in different talents from different areas and constantly learn. So to summarize this part on the human side of AI is that breadth is the new depth. Yeah, you really need to be a generalist in the future. You need to be a serial learner. We need these people in our organizations, people able to connect many different dots, and are far more valuable than those who specialize in one thing. And you need serial collaboration. You really need all this exchange, these mashups of different skill sets and ideas coming together to build a business advantage. And you really need to be able to adapt very, very quickly. Yeah, just learning something arcane, something very specific, probably won't be of much use in the future. And one very concrete example that we've seen also in the space of AI in the last 2 years, lining that out, is like if you remember when ChatGPT was launched and the first image generation models were released, and everyone was like, "Oh, in the future we're all gonna need prompt engineering, and it's gonna be a number one skill for the AI age. It's gonna be prompt engineering," and everyone was looking for prompt engineers and trying to figure out how to write the best prompts for a certain tool. And what we see 2 years later, uh, we don't really need the greatest prompt engineers, because now AI can write much better prompts for different AI tools than we probably could, right? And you can just use ChatGPT or Claude to create really outstanding prompts, for example, for a tool like Sora or Midjourney. And my prompt engineering skills don't really matter, right? It's more about telling the AI what I want to achieve, and it's gonna translate it into something for the next tool. And the next step is going to be that we actually have AI agents that do all of this for us and don't even use human language anymore, because it's not very efficient for AI models to talk to each other in Spanish, in English, in German. There's much better ways for these automated systems to communicate. So what you need on the workplace side is people who understand how these models work and how to really frame their input, but you don't need very specified prompt engineers, for example, to create the best practice in Midjourney or a tool like Sora. Yeah, but enough about AI. I promised I won't spend the whole session talking about it. I want to jump into something different. Maybe, yeah, the more human side. And something that we all really care about, because it's consumers. At the end of the day, in marketing, we care about changing consumer behavior. And we see a lot of different trends evolving there currently that will shape how the future of consumer engagement will work. Because if we really want to understand how consumers work, we really need to understand why they make decisions in the way that they do. And one of the big topics that was overlapping the whole conference in the marketing tracks and in the content tracks this year was that we're seeing the first cracks in our hyper-connected world that we've been building for the last 20, 25 years. I don't have any numbers for the Spanish market on mind, but in Germany, something we see for the first time in like forever, since I've been doing this job, for the first time, the overall media usage time is going down and has been going down the second year in a row. And I think that's the first sign that we're back to pre-COVID levels, I think on the level of 2018, 2017 in media usage, where we see that maybe we have reached peak media and we have reached peak digital media, and people start to re-evaluate how much time they want to spend being stuck in the digital world. And we saw a lot of cool talks and sessions on that topic and how we have to react in marketing to that. Because the world feels more and more designed for efficiency and engagement, and not for real humans, right? We optimized everything. We optimized everything to our digital lives for speed, efficiency, scalability. But somehow along the way, the human connection got lost. And what did we sacrifice? Really meaningful engagement, true community, really deep connections with different people, with other people, sharing ideas and actually talking to each other. And South by wouldn't be South by without being a tech conference that starts the whole conference. The opening keynote wasn't about AI, it wasn't about the future of marketing or the biggest new things in branding. And they brought out a specialist as the keynote speaker on the first day to open the conference that was talking about the topic of social health. And social health is basically the missing piece of well-being for us, but also for our consumers. Because in the last 20, 30 years, I think we quite established the importance of physical health because being active, being fit is a really good way, to live a long life. And in the past decades, especially driven by the millennials and Gen Z, the topic of mental health became, a really big thing, not only at the workplace or in private lives, but it's become a thing that we talk about and that we value as a society and say, hey, we really not only have to take care of the physical health of our people, but also mental health. It's really important for people to live happy lives, to perform well at the workplace. But the missing link between those two is actually social health. And social health is the ability to form, maintain, and benefit from relationships. And for a tech conference to really put this topic front and center, I think is really, a good sign that maybe we need to reevaluate how we deal with, making everything digital. Because what we've seen is that despite living in the most connected area of our times, like we all have more connections to anyone than any humans in history before, we sometimes don't feel real connection, and our connected world is making us lonelier. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, they proclaimed that loneliness is a global epidemic, and it's something that we really need to combat. And Kesley Killiam, who was the keynote speaker on this topic of social health, she compared, the digital communication and connections to empty calories that we often binge on, and it makes us feel good for maybe a slight moment, but it's not really fulfilling in the long term. And what this leads to is this imbalance between work life and social fragmentation. It leads to over reliance on digital relationships through social media and sometimes even through AI companions. If you remember Snapchat, 2 years ago, they launched the Snap AI feature, which was a chatbot that was living on the top of your connections list in Snapchat over your friends, and you could talk to this bot. And it was one of the most successful features that Snapchat has launched in the last 10 years because people suddenly had someone to talk to that was always there for them because maybe their friends were sleeping, going out, were not replying to their snaps. The bot is always there. It's quite this topic to think about it this way that people rely on AI to get a feeling for human connection. And what's also happening in the world, and I think you all see this if you walk through your cities where you live and your places, we have a lot less third places and third spaces that aren't our workplace or our home that really bring together people where they can share ideas and just meet and talk and without consuming something. So this all really leads to this big loneliness epidemic. And there's things happening. For example, in the United Kingdom and in Japan, there's dedicated government entities that have the task of how do we combat this loneliness epidemic for our society, for our country. And what we noticed a couple of weeks ago when we were in the UK with our colleagues and we talked about this topic, they were all quite surprised and said, "Oh, we have our own commission for that. I didn't even know that." Right? So I think it's still very early, and a lot of more talking and publicity needs to be done there. But also in the UK, doctors can now subscribe, just like medicine. They can subscribe. Hey, you need to uh, get into a community. You need to talk to other people to maybe get fitter, get mentally more stable. And a lot of brands are jumping on this topic that really using real world events to bring together people, especially in sports. We have the topic of the example of Lululemon in there, the yoga and fitness brand. They do regular meetups in many different cities where people can go to yoga together, for example. If you think about Adidas, the running community that they built globally with Adidas runners years ago, is really a good example of how a brand can use the power of community locally in real life to build something more than just selling shoes and running accessories as a sports brand, because they really sell this idea of running being this socially cool thing that you do with friends, with people you meet, and they're building a whole brand on top of that. So what's going to be next here? Social health will become a competitive advantage, not only for companies in fostering that kind of spirit, but also for brands, something that you can really communicate and bring out into the world, into real life events. And a lot of real life events then generate content and assets for digital communication. So it's not the one thing or the other, you can combine them. But we also will see new policies emerge in terms of healthcare, where social fitness becomes a key preventive measure to combat the health crisis. And education and work will also change, because I think it's going to be important in the future to really rethink in our organizations how we deal with that, the topic of building connections between people. So the future belongs to those who design for human connection and not just digital engagement. I think that's an important message to all the brands out there. When we think about building campaigns, we have to look beyond the digital engagements of likes and visits and comments and shares, but also think about how does this play into people having real connections with others, but also our brands and our products in the real world. And another thing that we're beginning to see, especially in young audiences, and it's the first signs, right? It's not yet a widespread phenomenon, that people are starting to reject hyperconnectivity. And you could go as far and say, hey, we're starting to see the beginning of a rebellion against the always on culture that especially the youngest generation in terms of Gen Z has been living in their whole lives for the 25 years that they've been alive. And we're seeing that a lot of young people are starting to begin unplugging, to embrace analog experiences and rejecting this algorithm-driven existence that has been forced upon them by a lot of big platforms, and that was kind of expected of them, right? Because if we think about Gen Z and about engaging Gen Z, we usually talk about, yeah, we have to be on TikTok, we have to be on Instagram, because that's where they all are. They are digital natives. But what we forget is that maybe there's a life beyond these platforms and these apps that young people are really craving. And why is this happening? People are getting tired of the algorithms and how they bring content to them just endlessly, and you're never done. So you keep scrolling and you keep scrolling, trying to see everything, but you don't really feel satisfied anymore. A lot of content increasingly feels inauthentic. So that's also a problem that we have to combat. And you generally feel exhausted by just this magnitude of digital experiences and content and engagement that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. When it comes to the algorithm fatigue, what does it mean? A lot of young users start to feel trapped in this engagement-driven content cycle, because most social platforms, they are optimized for maximizing usage time, screen time, not necessarily meaningful engagement. I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg goes as far and he said a couple of weeks ago, yeah, social is dead. He sees his platforms as basically content machines and not places where people connect and come together and exchange meaningful ideas or have conversations. It's just content consumers, right? So all the platforms now favor viral, outrage-based, clickbait content. Once you engage with them, you're going to see more of it and more of it and more of it. And it's really just about hijacking attention. And the cultural response that we're going to see even more in the next couple of months and years is that people go back to intentional content consumption. So they where they purposely curate their feeds to follow certain people, certain accounts, and only see what they want to see because they don't want to get this algorithm, just pushing them more and more content into their feeds that they don't want. And we're going to see a further growth of alternative apps that actually enable users to do that. And we saw one keynote of the CEO of Blue Sky, the micro blogging service comparable to Twitter or threads from Instagram, that exactly enable people to have a timeline like this, where you can follow certain people and you have the timeline visited, displayed by time posted, and there's no additional content being put in there. And once you're through, you're through. You've seen everything from the people you want to read, and it's up to you to curate your own timeline and basically go back to what Twitter was like, 20 years ago when they launched in 2006. And really curate your own feeds. The second thing that people are starting to get tired of is traditional social media. It feels increasingly curated and inauthentic because it's all very high level, very glossy. It all starts to look the same because once you figure out, hey, how does it work? People are going to start copying successful content, and nothing really feels real anymore. Nobody anymore just posts your night out on Instagram as a photo, because you think about, oh, when is the engagement the highest and when do I put this out so all my friends can see it and engage with it so I can grow as a personal brand on that social platform, which is really weird, right? The cultural response that we're starting to see there, especially in younger audiences, is the shift to unfiltered content, where they just post the raw and unedited experiences, like photo dumps, and just say, hey, this was how my life looks like. It's not this polished 30-second, 50-second video. It was a couple of pictures from McDonald's last night after I went out with my friends, and that's how I feel, and this is what I want to communicate to my friends. And on the other hand, we're going to see a rise of low content, that is, very low energy, that doesn't need a lot of involvement, that I can choose to consume on my own times. For example, podcasting is having its, I think, third spring now, um, because it's one of these mediums that you can consume on your own time. It's very focused. It's audio only. You can listen on it on your way to work while working out, but you take the decision, right? And you don't have to engage with anything. You just listen to people. Um, Reading is having a real resurgence, especially in young audiences, mostly driven by TikTok, that's true. But people start to disconnect then from book talk and the digital space of reading and just enjoy reading again on paper, which nobody really would have assumed 5 years ago. And what this also leads to is that in media and in communication, we really need to think about what touch points did we actually forget and don't use anymore because they don't give us an immediate feedback channel. For example, print. Maybe we're going to see a resurgence of print magazines, out of home, ambient media, all these things that are outside that people can use while they're not digitally engaged and maybe build contacts there, going to have a resurgence probably within the next year. And the third one is digital exhaustion, where people really feel overwhelmed by the constant digital noise and they really crave more intentional engagement. Because the average person, after removing all the time we spend at work before screens, is still using screens for 7+ hours per day, which is insane, if you really want. And it leads to burnout, it leads to mental fatigue, lower attention spans, because you feel constantly overwhelmed by notifications and by new content, and you have endless choice to consume something. And what we're seeing there is the big rise in the cultural response of digital detox, where people actively take breaks from social media. They switch to more minimalistic tech. They say, hey, maybe I don't need the latest phone. Maybe I'm good with something that just shows me my emails and my WhatsApp messages, and I can take a couple of pictures with. And we're seeing this big boom of analog hobbies. I already mentioned books, also the insane growth of vinyl music, because it's a much more deliberate way of listening to music. If you put a record on a record player and enjoy the album for the next 45 minutes instead of just switching through Spotify. DIY crafting, all that is really having a big comeback. And it all offers engagement without being distracted digitally. And this is something that you can really play into as a brand as well, especially if you have something physical and you can have people do something physical. I think that's a really fantastic way of building engagement that isn't driven by digital means. So the biggest competition for social media isn't a new social media platform. It's people getting tired of it, because people don't necessarily want more content. They want better, more intentional interactions with real things. And with this, also the era of infinite choice may be end. Again, Scott Galloway here, in his session, he really lined out how choice is becoming a tax for consumers. And he had this interesting analogy that he mentioned, that in the 80s, especially in the United States, but also globally, the companies generating the most shareholder value were big box retailers that had an almost unlimited selection of products. So no matter what you wanted to buy, you could go there, walk in, and you had 20 different of everything, 30, 50, 60 different things of everything. And that all was very successful until in the 1990s, the specialty stores came along that drastically reduced the choice for consumers to maybe the two, three, four best products in different price ranges. And they were much more successful because they removed one central thing from the whole shopping experience, which was having to make a choice. And if we transfer this to today, a lot of e-commerce, for example, a lot of retailers, a lot of media companies, they're still advertising, hey, on our platform, you can choose from hundreds of thousands of products. We have everything you can ever think of. But that really puts a tax on the consumer, because if you go, for example, on Amazon today, and you're looking for a very simple product, for example, a charging cable for your phone, and you put in, hey, I need a USB-C charger for an iPhone, you're gonna get 2,000 results. Do you want to go through all of them and really spend the time and the mental load making this decision? Probably not. And Scott Galloway said, and I strongly agree with that, AI can play a really big role there in the future to reduce this decision fatigue from people and can make the decisions for you. They can curate a selection based on all the stuff that is out there. And curation is going to be the next big thing, especially in retail, but also in media. If you don't want to overwhelm your consumers and really, reduce the mental load when it comes to making product selections. And a lot of platforms are already doing that. I mentioned Spotify earlier. Nobody really has the capacity to go through all the new releases all the time. There's automated content curated for you that's very personal to your listening behavior and the things that you like on this platform. A lot of big brands started to be active on Reddit, for example, Glossier, the cosmetics company, where they actively engage their consumers, where they make them recommendations out of their gigantic offering, to reduce the stress of having to do all the research on your own. And a lot of retail stores are also adapting this. Where you actually, in this example, APL, the shoe retailer or the shoe brand, where you can go in and have a real experience in the store and not just see thousands of shoe boxes on shelves where you have to pick and choose, but where they do all the exhausting work for you. And we've seen the results of this now in the last couple of weeks with, for example, OpenAI launching the product research feature that will really help consumers to pick between different products. And what's important for brands in this new age is you really have to think about, how do I present my own data, my product info in a way that the AI models are actually gonna use them and be trained on them. And that's also be a big topic at the OMR conference that we've attending in Hamburg a couple of weeks ago, where we, for example, learned that a lot of traditional editorial media has a really big role in providing good and reliable data to these models. So, for example, product tests in traditional newspapers and news magazines digitally are a very trusted source for the models. So this changes how SEO works in the future. We really need to rethink how we present data on the web, not necessarily for the consumers because they don't want to spend time on your website, but for the AI tools that actually scrape this info and help people create the decision-making process. And this all isn't just a small trend, or right now it's a small trend, but it has the potential to turn really into a mass cultural reset in the future and really, yeah, reshape how we as marketers and brands have to interact with people. And if we think about the future of consumer engagement, that changes the playing field as well, because for the longest time, our marketing model was, okay, we have to capture attention no matter what. We have to sell a message and really have to drive a transaction. I think we're seeing the limits of this type of marketing playbook right now, where purely performance marketing reaches the limit, where brand building has a resurgence, and a lot of marketers really think about, oh, how do I have to design my brand and invest into my brand to actually capitalize later in the performance sphere. So this new engagement model really builds on participation, on immersive experiences, on building long-term relationships, what exactly brand building is about. So it's becoming more building brand culture and less buying attention in the future, because buying attention in a very fragmented world where every media journey for every person is completely unique and the overall time is going down, probably doesn't cut it anymore. We really need to think about how to reach out to people in different ways in the future. And one really fantastic session that I attended was by two Australian agency leads, the McKinney brothers. They founded the Taboo Group in Melbourne, I think 7 to 8 years ago. They're an agency that mostly does viral and viral marketing, but they really drove home one point that I really enjoyed. They said a lot of brand building today and a lot of marketing today is just so safe and so similar to each other that people instantly forgot what they've seen, right? Because we all pre-test our campaigns, we basically boil them down to the lowest common denominator, so it really kind of fits everyone, but at the end it really fits no one. And they introduced their own brand building model that I really enjoyed to build brands in this culture area where everything is samified and feels the same. They said, hey, look at your category, at your industry, and look at where the expectations between the culture and the category are misaligned. Are there fault lines that you can use and then actively break rules and challenge expectations and break the conventions that have been established in this playing field? Because for them, the central message was to build for brands in the future, we have to dare again to create tension, to be loved, to be hated, to pick a side, to engage people, to really foster active debate. So people become your fans, so they will really, yeah, stand out and inspire action after that. So people say something, do something, and then you redefine your whole industry. And I think this quote by Andrew McKinnon, one of the two founders, he said, "If your brand isn't something that people can feel, it's something that they can forget." And I think that's a really important message that we have to remember. We have to invest in brands, in brand building, in building these communities of people that, yeah, that feel something when they think about our brand and don't just see an engagement opportunity and a checkout page in a store. So what's next? A lot more interactive, collaborative experiences in brand building, blending physical and digital worlds where brands exist fluidly in both places, and a lot of shopping, entertainment, engagement will, yeah, basically be more participatory, more gamified in the future because of that. So a couple of collisions and connections for today. Collisions create the future if we let them, if we take the puzzle pieces and put them together, create something new. And the really interesting things happen in the in-betweens. And I'd like to close with a quote from one of my favorite speakers every year at South by Rohit Bagarwar. I can only encourage you to check out his newsletter, but also his talks. He's a really passionate speaker about the future of branding and creating really good storylines. And he said, meaning comes from intersections. And instead of just seeing one thing, see the intersections between things, because that's where the magic happens, the really cool things take place. And we all should spend more time looking at those points. So thank you very much for your time, for your attention today. I hope there were some interesting thoughts in today's session. If you want to to get in touch with me or my colleague Simone, who helped me put together this fantastic deck, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, to send us an email, to reach out to Gerardo at our Spanish office. They're also doing really fantastic work. And yeah, thank you very much for your time. And I'll happily take a couple of questions in the minutes that we have left. Thank you very much.
Great. Alex, muchísimas gracias. Muy interesante, very enlightening. So really thanks very much for sharing your insights. Bueno, ahora a partir de ahora abrimos a preguntas. Si queréis hacer alguna pregunta en el... ¿Queréis? Alex, you're on mute. Ok.
No.
Yeah, ok. Si queréis hacer alguna pregunta, por favor, incluidnoslas en el chat. Vamos a esperar un momento. Alex, we have some comments. Ruth Santana says, thanks very much. We love all the information you share with us. So any question? I know Esteban wanted to ask a question. Okay. No more questions. So we'll close it with this. Thanks very much, Alex. And all the best in the future endeavors. And looking forward to seeing you here for the next South by Southwest. Thanks very much. Have a good day.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good rest of the week. Bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.